2024 meeting. Reservation Water Management Board. Would you honor us with our opening prayer?
You bet. Yeah, me too. That's great. Dear Father in heaven, we want to acknowledge you today and praise you for all that you're doing, both things that we know about and things we don't know about today. We want to also ask for your grace and wisdom on our meeting today, that we be able to serve each other and our community well. And it's in your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. And as always, the meeting minutes for anyone who wishes to see them are on the Flathead Reservation Water Management Board.gov website. Tenants, please.
Clayton Matt,
Here.
Roger Miller,
Here.
George Sneeze,
Here,
George McLeod,
Here.
Shane Hendrickson.
Present.
Thank you. And Ken Pitt is not with us right now.
Hi, Shane. Okay, any potential conflicts of interest? Georgia.
no,
Georgia.
No.
None for myself. Okay. Adoption of meeting minutes from 12:10, please. Propose. You're ready? The comments or questions, we should raise them now, otherwise, when you're ready, we'll take a motion to approve.
Mr. Chair, I move that we adopt the December 10th meeting.
And by Georgia,
I'll second it.
and by George, on favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, hearing none? Approved, thank you. Off the days agenda. Please. Next changes.
No, I'm no, I'm not.
Roger.
So I had my November stuff. My November separate from board meetings is done. Want to get it all written up. I wouldn't mind just getting that through the system.
Would you say it again?
My compensation, outside compensation.
Oh.
Board meetings is finished. If we can take a look at that too, then I hope get that.
Okay.
I like to stay current on that, because then I forget about it otherwise.
Yeah, can you-
It's just hanging out there too long.
Can we include that in the 3.1?
Yeah.
Is that all right, guys?
Sure.
Yeah.
All right. We will discuss that as well in the 3.1. Mergers. With curricular compensation.
And you need to get yours in.
I think I had.
Yeah.
For November. Did I have some? I just texted Rod that said I voted. So
We'll,
clearly I need to check with you first before I say, okay.
okay, we'll discuss possibly mergers as well.
Well, you would need to finish yours.
Okay.
There's something to approve.
Okay.
Thanks, Roger.
Okay.
I need to slow down.
The other thing I have is
last month.
under the board actions, we'll need public comment, so I'll make sure we cover that.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to adopt the agenda with 2.1 added.
3.1.
I thought you said 2.1. Yeah, 3.1. Okay, my fault. Sorry. I stand corrected.
Motion by George,
Second.
second by Roger, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Here, you have an agenda. All right. Public comment for items not on the agenda. No physical public here. Anybody online?
We have no one on.
No public to comment. We will move right along. Budget update. Fiscal. Afternoon.
I don't have a whole lot to go over other than regular board compensation for November and a contract.
And those are on
On the agenda for review and to make motion for approval.
the review of meeting compensation. So, before we do that, just a quick question, we're getting close to having our reports done to the state.
You mean to submit financial?
Yeah.
I have not made the contact out to Greg Spar yet with the short turnaround between the last meeting and this meeting.
Okay. And then we're waiting to do that before we give the
Yes,
state
that
the
was,
report.
that's what I believe your guys' directions was, to reach out to Greg before we did the reporting.
Yeah,
I know,
Roger.
I think we can always go back and modify anything if Greg has comments. I think we need to really get that report in the state's hands and the at CSKT's hands.
That's my take on that. You guys did. So, yeah, I think that it's probably important we eventually meet with Greg, but if that information, if you all believe that the information is ready to report to the state, let's get it done.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Do we have a committee that wants to, or do you want, how do you want it presented? You want myself, or do you want Ethan, or?
If there is a report, then I think for informational purposes, the board should see it, but aside from that, as long as it is sent, and I think that if it goes through Ethan, that's fine. I think just provide it and just make sure we do a formal.
Yeah, I think it's the OE's responsibility to do that reporting, but you need to work with Ethan to getting what he needs.
And just in my mind, if I were doing it, I'd be talking to them and saying, this is what we have and this is gonna cover it, before you send it. And if you're ready to send it, let's just get her done.
Certainly, Mr. Chair and board members, I've got multiple meetings on the books this week with state folks, and I'll add some tribes just to make sure that we can give them an example of what you guys can produce and ensure that that meets the standard.
Yeah, and then I think once that's done, they'll be able to release money. That's gonna be the next big thing.
Yeah.
All right, with that, board review of meeting compensation. We have a form here, so let's take these one at a time. We do this form and then we want to talk about larger non-board union compensation. So starting with this form. I'm good with it. I saw it already. I'm good.
And
Me too.
Oh, me too.
I make a motion, we approve the board compensation for November 2024.
Motion by Roger,
I'll second it.
second by George, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. I assume Ken is good with it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, we're good. Rogers, so Roger, what do you got?
I had 5 days basically, no travel involved, so it's $1,500. Not was, I've given all my stuff to Rhonda, she's written it up, prepared it, I've signed it, she signed it. Pretty much it, thank you.
You got the documentation?
I do have this documentation. It has not been posted to the public, nor has it been put on a spreadsheet. So it's however you guys, I do have this documentation.
You good?
I'm good.
You're good with that? You guys need to see that? Okay. So. Is. Board compensation information normally out to the public?
So, as far as I know, yes, it's always been put out to public for approval because it's an action. And so, I don't have Roger's information on a spreadsheet because we were waiting to get back from Georgia and we had really tight public posting deadlines because of the meeting. So I had to get it to OE staff, I believe Thursday by 1, and, we didn't get this information in time.
How do we put it?
The OE puts it on the website and with public notice.
Can you,
Mr. Prince, could you please share the chairman, the website and the postings?
Gonna be reminded if I did.
I'm just trying to, think through if it's gotta go to public, we need to do that. How do you wanna address that? We need to get it posted and then, so we can take action and say it's approved pending posting.
I don't know if you would need to post it or just read it into the record that you've approved it. Maybe some good question for Haley.
Is Haley on? Haley, you're online?
Yeah, hi guys. The posting of it, James, is it possible to put it under the date today with the other meeting materials? After this meeting?
Yeah.
Okay, this was already amended on the agenda by board motion, so it's before the board for board approval. Let's just get the posting of it up after the meeting.
Oh, if you're ready, we'll take a motion to. Yeah, with the compensation.
I move that we approve Roger's compensation.
By George,
I'll second.
by George, all in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye. Thank you.
You bet. Merry Christmas.
Okay, Georgia, did you need to talk about any of it? Yours?
I don't think I looked at what yours was for. Did I? I don't recall. It wasn't in my notes in my planner. So if I did help, I don't think it was over 3 hours or something. So
If something changes by next meeting, just let us know.
yeah, I'm good. Okay.
Okay, all right. Board. Actually, we did that, board review of the letter of engagement. We had a letter of engagement, is that a new one?
We do. This one is for January 1st to March 31st. This is a continuation of her services with a new engagement letter.
Any changes?
Yes, this is to include finishing out the taxes for this year and helping with the IRS. So there's some additional
You
language.
just print that out of me.
Very last page. It states process all contractor pay, collect W-9s and tax vendor record, create and send year-end 1099s over $600 threshold to the vendor by January 31st and IRS by February 28th. Any late or corrections to 1099s will be charged $200 per 1099. So that language is additional from last contract. And there's a lot to do, so
And she's good with this?
yes.
Haley, have you looked at it?
Yes, I have. I think the only thing I wanted to point out was just the board make sure and look at the fee. And if you're fine with the fee, then the contract looks good.
Has fee changed?
So originally in the last contract, it was $2,500 for payroll and $2,000 for reconciliation, not to exceed $10,000. And so we've gone through this, and so we're going to continue on with the reconciliation with your board's approval. And so it's going to be a fixed rate now, it's $4,500 per month.
Previously?
It's been running 4,500 a month. They just had different minimum wage. They said,
Okay,
not to exceed $10,000, but it's, yeah.
But now she's done it a time or two and she knows
Yeah.
exactly what it takes.
Yeah.
that not to exceed $10,000 is over what
To the 31st of this month.
no, over a month, 2 months, 3 months.
The last contract was 3 months, I believe.
Remember,
I think it looks good.
So that not to exceed language isn't in here. now?
Yeah.
you know, it just says $400 a month.
And we'll revisit this again on before the 31st of March, obviously, and hopefully, the amount of work is gonna be wrapped up and we'll have a better number to say what this is gonna look like monthly if we continue, if the board wants to continue.
I guess I'd make a motion to approve the updated contract with Red Cap.
Motion by Roger,
I'll second.
and by Georgia, all in favor, say aye.
I,
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, we're done.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Public comment on that, but for the record, there is no public comment. As I understand. Okay, there was a desire to discuss board member terms and fifth member selection process, so I know, Georgia, we communicated, I really appreciate your continuation, but I think it was suggested that the board have this discussion just to make sure we're updated on where we're at with our terms and the process. So, Haley, is this yours?
Yeah, sure, I can start it off and then I know Roger's had some recent conversations too with Kristen Juris, so Roger, feel free to chime in if I miss anything. So yeah, this was just brought up mainly because there is still this kind of unknown about how the board wants to select their fifth member. In the past, it's been kind of both parties just putting out people and suggestions and then going from there. But now the state and the tribes, through Kristen Juris's communication to me, it made clear that they really want the board, now that it's operational, to come up with its own selection process. So this is kind of just an opportunity, since it's kind of the end of the year, nobody's term is up currently, but end of the year, kind of thinking about those things, getting some conversations going, and yeah.
So Haley, I think at the end of 2025, there'll be 3 positions that are turned out or they expire. So, so then I guess people will have to decide if they want to stay aboard on or not. And then I think like with Clayton and mine, if we don't stay on, then the state would nominate somebody, wouldn't they? And it's the 5th person that the board kind of can go solicit that person's. So.
Yeah, yep, correct. So yeah, Clayton and Roger, you are both up in December of next year. The next person would be Georgia, in January of 2026. And then both Ken and George are on until December of 2027. But yes, Roger, you are correct. With yours and Clayton's appointments, those would be done through the compacting parties, so the tribes and the state respectively. And then correct again with George's position where it is a 5th member selection process, but now the compacting parties would like the board to come up with that selection process.
Was there a formal written process that they had followed? And if not, maybe the best thing to do would be just to create that policy language and have you and Ethan work together and propose some policy selection process for the board to approve. And then we'll just follow that.
Yeah, I think the best method would probably be through a resolution. And that way it'll be just a continuous, procedure for the board.
Roger,
So I think last time around too, what they did with that fifth member position was both parties had candidates left over from their selection process, so they just took those 5 or 6 individuals and put them forth as the nominees, and then the 4-member board reviewed them and selected the 5th member, but because there's no longer candidates, that doesn't apply anymore. And
I
I
wasn't a
think-
candidate.
Pardon me?
I wasn't a
You
candidate.
weren't a candidate?
No,
that was a separate process line.
I was an odd duck.
Huh.
So
Oh,
calendar challenged odd duck apparently. So
So a resolution sounds fine to me. Would you like to see a resolution on this so that we can get that approved? Yeah, well, head nods here, so if we can get a draft resolution to look at, that'd be helpful. And they've got plenty of time, but if we can get something in place, that'd be great.
And then, I don't recall, are those terms on the website for the board?
We still have that open.
Yeah, that's a good question. If our terms aren't, we probably should have.
Yeah. Especially now that we have that memo from the state and the tribes stating what they are, it'll be good to put those up there.
Question I had is the 5th member, Shane.
You,
Oh, okay.
oh, yeah, it's me.
no, the Shane is the non-voting member appointed by the United States.
Okay, that's what I thought. Yeah. I just wasn't sure. Thank you.
Sure.
On recollection, so, regarding the terms, at one point we did have your terms up there, and then you guys had asked us to take them down so that, we could more easily manage wiggle room, because sometimes the nomination and selection process is, takes a little, finesse to engage. Happy to do whatever you would like, but, that was, they were there.
And we
And
took it
then you
down.
had them take us down, and we can put them back up again if you would, so like.
Yeah. You know, if we have a selection, you know, if those selection processes are defined, I think having them up there is fine with me.
Yeah,
Would you like them all in like a block of board members?
I think, rather,
Or,
for me, for example, right underneath my name, term,
okay,
right there with the term, yeah. I mean, if you guys want it some other way,
It's fine.
it's fine with me.
yeah, put it right under our names. Then once we approve a resolution for the 5th member position, then that'll be posted online as well. Public will know. Is there anything else on that, Haley, you need from us, or you want to talk about?
No, it was short and sweet on that today. Thank you.
That's fine. Any questions from the board?
No.
Okay. Office of Water Engineer, number 5, and so Ethan, if you, Ethan, and or Haley, and or any other board member, the other thing we wanted to talk about there was a question of Sapphire, and I think you were talking about whether or not we wanted to go ahead and do at least a year contract with them to provide that service, provide that benefit. That'd be a benefit, and something that we pay for, that would be a benefit to the employees. When we, in your report, we should talk about that as well.
is that now?
Yeah.
All right, Mr.
Yeah,
Chairman.
We're up. Number 5.
All right, Mr. Chairman, board members, regarding the item of Sapphire, following the board meeting, you had directed me to engage staff members and ask them about Sapphire subsequent to, and that was, before you had an additional executive session. Subsequent to the executive session, you sent out a general communication that was slightly different, requesting staff members to respond to you directly. So I did, in that interim time, solicit information from 3 of the staff members that were present. I'm happy to share that, or I also did, after I got your communication, circle back with those staff members and encourage them to respond to you directly. So, what I can tell you is that the staff members that I talked to, did not have a lot of, feel that they needed to engage Sapphire services. That said, you may have gotten something different in your personal communications that I'm not aware of if you did get any personal communications. So that was the general group discussion. There was some interest in re-engaging the Dr. Sullivan, the trainer who had come and done some team building, and that seemed to, folks were interested in that. I would separate, not necessarily in place of, but since we're on the topic, I would like to be able to advance with another contract with Dr. Sullivan for some services. But I don't know if there's a direct overlap. There certainly hasn't been so far. I am aware that he provides an array of services beyond what we engaged in, which was more team building and communication improvements and things like that. But I hope that does a decent job answering your question, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, and I didn't get any communications, did anybody get any communications? Yeah, so we don't have any additional information. So comments, questions?
There was appreciation for the offer, Mr. Chairman, board members.
I think it's still something with Sapphire that we need to consider. I just feel that it is an important service and something that we can offer our staff. And I'll just leave it there.
I think it's a good thing to have, and things change as you go along, and Sapphire does offer quite a few different areas of counseling that, maybe at some time it might be useful.
Yes, I don't know how to. I mean, they do definitely have a provide a great service, but I guess if there isn't an interest by the staff, then sort of reticent to do anything.
Doesn't sound like they would use it if it was there, but
Yes,
you never know.
That's the message I'm getting.
I'm trying to delicately give you that message and also not step on anybody's toes that might have in private had a different message.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm a little delicate, because of course somebody might have wanted that and then not told me in that particular approach. And then so I didn't want to circumvent some other enthusiasm that may have been present that I was unaware of.
Yeah, I guess I'd be interested in creating the option. What I'm not sure of, I'd have to go back and look at the contract options that it has. Because I think that if I don't know if there's a flat rate or if there is a rate based on what services are actually provided. And if that's the case, it might be still beneficial to create that option. And then if no one uses it, then you pay it. Or maybe there's a minimum charge for a contract and then you pay as you go. So I can find that out.
Yeah, and I think it is. I think it's also important to consider, you don't know what the next year will hold in someone's life,
Hmm.
right? And so. Just, I love how you put that, Mr. Chairman. It's an option if needed, but at least we create that opportunity.
So if you're interested, I'd be willing to reach out to him, talk to him a little bit about what contract options are. Explore that a bit. The other thing I'm thinking about is, you know, we were talking about maybe just doing a 1 year to see how that goes. We could explore that, or maybe even a 6 month to see how it goes. But if you're okay, I'll explore those options with him and get back to you and we can decide. That way, no harm, no foul, even if we do, the options available to staff, and if they choose to use it, fine. If they don't, then we can always move on. The next question I have then is, are you interested in engaging further with Dr. Sullivan, which does sound like staff is interested in doing something there relative to team building, which sounds positive to me.
Mhm. I would completely support that. I've had a chance to talk to him. And he just seems like a great guy. And I'm glad the staff enjoy working with him. So if it helps our staff, I'm all in.
I would support it also. The few times that we get together for these kind of things at work, it's always been helpful, you know, because you get the whole group together and sometimes you get things out that then you solve them right there sometimes, you know.
Okay, so I don't know how we engaged that last contract, so Ethan and Haley, if you guys can take a look at what his contract is and what those options are and get it to us, and we'd be glad to work with you and engage with him.
Mr. Chairman, board members, for the next part of that contract, it's well within like my spending authority, as long as I have your blessing here. I've been apprehensive to spend money without talking to you, so but it seems like you've got the financial directives sorted out a little bit more, so that I feel that if you're happy in this venue, I can proceed with the contract that would make sense for us.
I think, I don't remember if we saw it last time before we actually engaged. Can you see it?
Of course.
I'd like to
Mr.
make sure
Chairman.
we see it, and I'd like to make sure Haley sees it, so that if there's anything in there that we need to be flagged on, then we can do that. It'd just be good to know. Yeah. Roger,
When you're done with that, I got something else.
well, are you guys done with that? You guys good with that? Yeah, Haley, you good with that?
Yes.
Roger,
So this kind of came up when Ethan had asked me to check into some health insurance stuff, and I did. But then I got an email also from Marsh McClellan, and they always send those dang things in secure status, you know, so then you can open them, but you can't forward them to anything, anybody, can't print them, can't, you know, it's like, so I wound up having to go over and sit down at their office. And the rates are gonna change somewhat, and they vary between Pacific Source and Blue Cross Blue Shield. So Judy Sharp, to talk to her, she'd like to have, she can probably either come down or have a Teams meeting with staff. So it's kind of your option to how you'd like to do that. But just go over all the new information. I think it's not due until February, but probably, you know, probably the sooner the better.
okay. Any questions on that? No. You need anything from us on that?
Just Ethan to let me know and I'll learn, or you can schedule directly with Judy if you want to.
Okay, and did you want to be a part of that, Roger?
Yeah, I should, I say, start being the administrator.
Well, thanks for doing that.
So,
Is there no other questions on those items? Looks like we're at recruiting dates.
Mr. Chairman, board members, so we've enacted, three of the contracts, 3 of the 4 contracts, and I'm pretty close on getting the 4th contract set up, which would be the one for Anna. So we've got that moving forward. Additionally, we've, been preparing the application materials and started in on ranking applicants and moving forward with that process.
Remind us how many applicants?
9, 8, sorry. My apologies, 8, so we have,
Great. Okay.
When do you anticipate we'll sit down and have a meeting on that?
I'm trying to get that on the books right now, and the holidays are just circle,
Yeah.
so,
Like Jordan, I think we're on the meeting, and I'm just throwing this out because I know when Georgia's Christmas break is over, she's pretty well consumed, so if there's any chance maybe of doing something for January 6th, that would be ideal. I'm not going anywhere for Christmas, so I'm pretty available.
all right.
That work? I'm excited, 8 applicants. So may I ask, were they mainly from the area? Or were any from those that applied? Are they from the valley, from the region?
I think most of them are from the area.
Oh, wonderful. Okay.
You gotta, let's
we
drag
gotta-
Sydney into it.
Most of them are from Missoula or Kalispell.
Okay.
That's the area.
That-
So.
That's what I'm sorry for the, my area is a little bigger than some other areas, but
Okay,
yeah,
thanks.
so that would be, that's the bulk of folks.
Okay.
Very good thing. Okay. Anything else? Ethan?
We engaged in our first complaint
Oh,
this last week and did a site visit and met with the complainant and responded. No, I'm light on details for that for you, board members,
well,
but
we
just
just
want to let
probably
you know.
shouldn't hear a lot of details at this point. I think that the issue is that if we won't actually see it unless there's an appeal. Once that process is over and there's no appeal, maybe you can go over with us, so we know, but I think that sounds like the protocol in my mind, really, does that sound right?
Correct.
Is there a hearing scheduled for it?
There is, and the document that I sent out to board members has got the schedule order in it.
Yeah.
So it has,
I saw that.
it had the field visit, it has the respondent and complainant information, submission dates and the hearing.
Yeah, if you, whatever information you want to know about it, that information is out there, so you can read that. You need to see it. Anything else, Ethan?
I don't know if this is the right time, but I can tell you that we did all really kind of discuss the idea of the Polson rental. Would you want to hear anything more about that?
Oh, we're gonna look at that some more. I think, was there a plan for people to look at that? More, or, I'm just trying to remember.
Well, I think the direction was to continue to explore,
Okay,
is what the direction was.
okay, Ethan, what do you got on that?
So staff, although they really appreciated the idea of windows and the a more modern atmosphere, the drive time seemed to be a factor that outweighed things. For me, the money is also an issue, but so that was just kind of our general feedback. Of course, feel free to talk to staff on your own if you would like, but to try to fill that out and
Good to know.
give us a chance to get our minds together after taking a good look at it.
Yeah, all right, appreciate it. Thank you. Anything else?
There was resounding appreciation though for,
Yeah.
the responsiveness, about the window situation. So
Yeah.
that was, I believe, well received by everybody, and, everybody looked at that as a kindness, a thoughtfulness.
So windows without a commute. That's what you need, right? Okay, I get it. That's fair.
A local lake might be nice, an
Local lake,
additional reservoir for, that can help us out.
fake window with a picture of the lake, we could do that.
I've seen that before.
I've seen those before.
I've had one of those. Anything else?
This is James' last week, man, for.
Yeah, it is.
For an in-person, gig, and so he, of course, we thought you weren't gonna get another meeting with him, but, our dynamic, in the office is gonna shift a little bit, and we're sad about him, departing, but we've got him on the hook for a little bit of contract. It's not exactly, it's employee contract, hourly, work, so not a separate, contract, like you would for a subcontractor or something, but, so I wanted to bring that up, and dang. We'll need to shift around, and, you guys will have to have a little patience with the office as we, move through, this transition.
Well, before you eventually completely depart ways, we need to have a going away to buy you a cupcake or something. But we appreciate all your work and appreciate you being willing to help us out in the interim. So much appreciated. Yeah. I appreciate the opportunity. Yeah. Thank you. Anything else, Ethan?
I can stop talking now, Mr. Chairman.
Any report? Okay. Based on that, anything else, questions from the board members?
I'm good.
Okay. That moves us to personnel policies. Finally.
Finally. It's gonna feel so good to actually check some of these off.
Yeah.
They've been on these agendas for a while,
Well,
so
we could
it's good.
make it rapid. We could just approve them all right now. Be done with it and move on, but,
There you
yeah,
go.
And I've read them several times.
yeah, so. You guys need a break before we start this.
I will take a break, Mr. Chairman. You can.
All right,
discuss
take
without-
5.
You don't need.
Let's take a 5-minute break. 5 minutes and we'll start on the personnel policies. All right. Well, welcome back. Our 5-minute break went to 15, I think, but we are here. Oh, let's see, Billy's still here. All right. Personnel policies.
Mr. Chairman, would you want me to MC for you on these items, or do you want it to happen differently?
You wanted to just walk through these? Like.
I know it's different.
Yeah. All right, let's start hitting them.
Stand up there.
Conversation.
So there's a separate document for the remote and telework. Which one?
So it's not this part of the policy?
No, there's a whole separate document. Bring that up. Is there a Word version in there? So you can edit it?
That's what I have is that.
I just need to find the word version.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, board members, I took a stab at trying to consolidate an array of different, sections that involve remote and telework. And, at our last discussion of personnel policies, there was some encouragement to have, the difference between remote work and telework defined. And so I took a stab at that. I tried to bring forward some of the ideas that Vice Chairman Noble had brought forward. I tried to bring forward some of the ideas that previous versions had. And so you have a two-pager in front of you. If you find something in here that you'd like to move forward, it would ultimately go into the larger document, but because this lived in both sections 10 and 5 at the time, to me, I thought it would help if we had a consolidated document for your consideration. So, the big topics is to we'll start off with, this intro language talks about the value of remote work and telework is really, that was in some of the earliest portions of personnel policies, as far as I know. There's a reiteration that these things don't affect an employee's compensation or benefits, so it's really just a nature of where they're performing their job. There's some discussion about how injuries, sustained in conjunction with the normal, regular duties, how that works under workman's compensation. That's not language that I wrote. I just copied that, put it in here. There is a discussion to help understand the difference. Remote work is described as, when somebody's hired and their primary work station is, is not this office. So a real world example would be Kathleen Schubert, who the primary workstation is her house. She's a remote worker. And that would normally be part of an employee's initial hiring agreement or an update to a hiring agreement. Still needs to be set forth in a remote work plan agreement. Someone may have a status that's entirely or a portion of their scheduled time as remote, but it's more firmly written into their day-to-day routine. So maybe Earl works remote on Mondays, every Monday, and that's part of Earl's position description, and we don't need to, to reevaluate that Monday arrangement all the time. In contrast, telework is a more flexible work arrangement where designated non-remote employees allowed to work from an approved designated alternative work site for a portion of their work schedule instead of physically traveling to the OE. It's not an entitlement. It needs to be requested by an employee in writing and approved by the employee's immediate supervisor. Telework may include periodic addressing the pressing OE work needed, while an employee would otherwise be taking PTO or other leave. Telework may be used to achieve essential duties occurring outside of periods when the employee is scheduled to work at the OE. And does that help to define the difference between remote work and telework in this situation? Okay, I see George is nodding. I'm going to say that, so I copied a lot of this from existing internet stuff.
I think you did it, and the stuff that I provided, I think you did a pretty good job of trying to define the difference between remote work and telework. There was a couple, I have some questions. I guess I thought, since we're at it, looks like you worked through to the alternative work sites section. So I have a couple of questions and whatnot. if that's
Yeah.
okay.
Roger.
Um, So I guess, have we checked with um, I don't know who you check with, but there's one set on the remote work and telework, the third paragraph down. Injuries sustained by the employee during remote work and telework and in conjunction with the employers, well, obviously with the regular work. But does employee comp and all that covers telework and remote work? I guess I'm just asking to know if that's, I guess, and I don't know, maybe that's a legal question for Haley too. I don't.
I'd like to hear from Haley, you know, it's probably good to spell out what we're thinking, maybe the differences between remote work and telework, but to me, they're kind of functionally the same thing. But my only personal experience with it. And during that time, we never addressed, I don't think, at least I never had to address the question of insurance and so forth. And that experience stemmed from COVID, the COVID
That
shutdown.
changed everything.
And that changed everything overnight. I mean, it's like, well, we're going to shelter in place, everybody stay home and within a matter of hours, if not days, you know, we were working off of Zoom meetings, and that's my experience. And I think things sort of evolved from there, and people became more comfortable working from home. And so all of their work was online and using Zoom, that kind of thing. Whether you call it remote or telework, to me, I don't think we ever said this is one or the other. It was just ordered. That's what we were gonna do. So trying to functionally really nail down the difference between remote work and telework, that's still stuck in my head, but I think if we're going to, I think it's good to spell it out. There are some other questions I probably have as I look through this, but anyway, Roger, it's my thoughts right now. I don't know either, but maybe Haley's got some thoughts on the insurance piece.
So I heard kind of bits and pieces of Roger's question. So Roger, are you speaking about the workers' compensation insurance?
Well, this paragraph just says injuries sustained by the employee during remote work and telework and in conjunction with an employee's, I think I would, we know, I think I would scratch that, and an employee's regular work duties. We know that we're covered under that, but if you could just provide some clarification as to workers' comp for telework and remote work applicability.
Yeah, I mean, from my research and understanding, remote work employees would be covered under workers' comp insurance for performing work-related duties. And if they're injured while performing those work-related duties, it would be outside of that. Like if they were walking outside of their house to go get their mail, that would not be covered under workers' comp. But if they were injured by, let's say, their standing desk that they have in their house that was provided by the board or the office of the engineer, then that could be submitted for a claim for workers' comp. But you're right, I would change that language, and that was actually one of my suggested edits that I had for this discussion. I think Ethan was trying to say, while performing work-related duties, and so I'd rather just change it to simplify it to that.
Hey, I actually thought I copied this from language that you put in to the WPMP.
I wouldn't
did-
in conjunction, but
I did make one modification to the language that was in there. On the last sentence, the original language that I had copied and put in here said the employee is liable for any injuries sustained by visitors to his or her home site, work site. I changed that to rather the FRWMB is not liable. But maybe we don't know quite where this language came from, but the point is, I don't necessarily claim to be a workman's comp expert on this stuff and stand for whatever clarifications. I do think it's a good idea to make it clear what is expected here.
So Haley, the specific recommendation you would have to that in conjunction language is,
So I think James already got it typed up.
Does that look okay to you?
That looks good.
I really like how these are defined.
simplified. Yeah.
That is helpful.
Okay, I'm good with that too. Change.
Okay.
Well,
Oops, sorry, Mr.
given that you like how they're defined, what's the difference?
So to me, when I look at this, I look at a remote work employee being someone that you bring on under contract, for instance, who is always going to be working from their home station. That's just assumed when you hire them. That would be like Kathy working out of Helena or hiring somebody from Billings or whatever. But telework would be someone that you would hire with the understanding that this office is their primary workstation, but on occasion, with the OE's permission and work levels and staffing and all of that thing, they can work from home.
The,
That right?
That was what I was trying to, I mean, I get caught up a little bit in what Mr. Chairman was saying, and that I can get them turned around in my head pretty easy, so, that's why I was trying, I figured if I could try to define them.
so the third bullet under remote work, you're on board with that?
And I think we did that with the contracts that we spelled out for Anna and for Kathy. In the contract language, we included their travel time on those occasions they have to come in, because it's assumed they're always going to be working at a distance and they don't have to come in very often. It's not like a daily thing. Whereas a telework employee is expected, most of the time they're going to work in the office and occasionally not. But on the days that they have to commute in, they don't charge for that commute.
Versions of this thing.
Well, so the third bullet, let's just look at that at the.
And keep in mind, Mr. Chairman, there is a last sentence out. In that it says alternatives to this arrangement may be specified in an employee's hiring arrangement, so, I don't want you to feel pinned down, sir.
Can I ask a question that's kind of beyond this a little bit?
Oh,
Just
go ahead.
out of curiosity thing.
Sure.
So, when we first started tackling policy, we were a brand new office and a brand new board, and we didn't know what was going to be coming through the door. And now we're 3 years in. I'm just curious, how many people would you say on average come in the door each week going, I need help, I need someone to talk to? Do we have an estimate on that? Ballpark,
I'm gonna say 10,
okay.
and I stand for correction. Yeah,
I would say my average is around 5-ish, 6.
Okay.
a week,
Yeah.
okay. James?
About 5 a week.
I would say, travel city.
Okay.
Same. On a Monday,
We get a lot of phone calls too.
yeah,
Okay.
Mondays are busy. Tuesdays can be kind of busy, and then it tapers off the end of the week, typically. That's what I've noticed.
That's really helpful information because, I'm not here every day, so I don't know what your foot traffic is like. And that, I think, informs this discussion a little bit, right? If how many people are coming in. Does it go up more in the summer?
I guess I was probably including folks who call in advance to set an appointment.
Oh,
And so, you know, because I think that when people call to set an appointment, it also has this expectation that we'd be open. That might be the difference, I don't know, but for instance, tomorrow, we have folks who have unresolved issues, you know, their stuff has been in abeyance. We have 2 back-to-back meetings, but they, you know, they prefer to do a call in and set an appointment and so that, you know, that'd be 2 of the visits this week. Has anybody walked in today?
One has.
One has.
okay.
Is that the person who set up an appointment for tomorrow?
No, that was somebody earlier.
Okay, so we know we'll have 3 in-person meetings, for applicants by, tomorrow at noon. Perhaps more, but,
Okay.
we could start to more specifically track that.
No, I don't want to create more work for anyone, and I
Okay.
appreciate you guys indulging my curiosity. I've just wondered, like, how many people come in a week? And if you are wanting to work from home, that's an important thing to consider, right? Is what is the foot traffic into the office? And 5 a week is different than 100, right? So that was helpful for me to understand, so thank you.
Certainly, and I will say, just for this topic, when we start to engage in the registrations of state-based rights, I expect that
I'll go on.
that's gonna increase by the level in which we send out communications. And it would be, closer to similar to when we first opened, and there was all of that backlog of folks who didn't register or who had pending real estate deals. And right now we're seeing a little push from folks who have pending small developments because you got that, that's moved, and so
Okay.
people can come in. Anyway, sorry to.
No, that's all really
We should
helpful.
be seeing a little bit, at least a little bit of a spike in stock water.
And those have been all on the phone for me and yeah. 5 total. They're sitting here now. Thanks.
Okay, alright. So you want to move on? Okay. Alternative worksite and equipment use.
Oh, I didn't get into the privacy and sensitive information section. You wanted to go in order. Mostly because I thought this was important. I really don't want to have a situation where somebody is having private or irretrievable information at their remote setting.
The next in order that I'm reading is the alternative worksite and equipment use.
I had a question before that, so
Oh, man, all right, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman.
the very last bullet under telework.
Yep. Well, there's a typo in that. There should be "and" instead of "and employee."
No bringing cooties to work, stay home. Got it.
Well, but that was the point I was thinking of. If you're sick, you shouldn't be. How functioning are you? You know? But this really doesn't say that.
Yeah, and I think. I don't know how to put it in the policy, but. we should, if we're gonna define things, you know, there's a difference between. Being sick and staying home and working. Being sick and there is no work,
Mm,
right?
mhm.
You're just not gonna work.
Yeah,
You know, the language that we have allows. For. Clear application of it.
Yeah, my concern was that this wasn't supposed to be a de facto sick leave policy.
I think this language on the 4th bullet, though, became commonly used during COVID, because you could be you could test positive and feel fine and still be able to work, but legally, you're not supposed to come in. And so maybe there needs to be a fifth bullet to address what you're talking about. Because I think now this is de facto language in the era of COVID,
I
right?
think this is policy language, but I think that in any given case, I'd like the employee and supervisor to agree case by case, whether or not an employee is working or not working if they're home sick.
Shane has his hand up.
Oh. Shane, you got your hand up. I see you. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I was just gonna carry the idea of telework just a little bit more. Usually with telework, there is an agreement that you sign from the employee to the employer that an agreement is on, you know, Tuesdays and Wednesdays, I'm gonna telework from home. And that does not authorize you a sick day at home. That's separate. So I would break out this bullet and stick it more under, you know, the health section, that this could be a component of a sick day. I'm not feeling well, but I'm good enough to work, but I might be contagious. And that's more of I guess something between the supervisor and employee to encourage them to stay home so they don't bring a contagious thing to the office. But that's not part of your telework agreement. Your telework agreement is specified times, specified hours, in a specified location.
I would consider us to add language that says something like employees unable to perform normal job duties are not eligible to telework.
That was,
Okay, and you know, James Wood. If you,
Shane's suggestion, no, is that, are you suggesting that would be the alternative to this suggestion?
I think it's nice to have it as a clarifying factor in this telework remote work section, but I don't think that necessarily eliminates this from also mentioning it under the health portion of the WPMP.
On the right, Shane?
And James, that would actually be part of the previous bullet.
This one?
No. The sentence that says employees, yeah, we just go to the bullet right above it. Because it helps to qualify when you could or could not use telework. And
Well-
I'm sorry.
No, I know I'm interrupting, but I think, as I think about it, I think that, we need to also stick to the idea of applying for sick leave. So that if someone is gonna be home and they either want or it's agreed that they're not gonna work, that it should be documented under a sick leave action, right?
yeah,
A leave action, so that there's documentation that they're actually on leave during that time. Because if we're going to specify language in a lot of reasons, but if we're also gonna specify language in here about, workers' comp and insurance. If you're on leave, you're on leave. That's your time then, at that point.
So that really helps keep all parts of the policy consistent with one another, doesn't
If
it?
we're doing
Okay.
that, yeah,
Gotcha.
that's what's in my head.
and
Yeah.
how do
that's all.
you wanna add that in?
Maybe just a reference to the sick leave, somehow just a reference to the sick leave policy.
Okay. Maybe another bullet that says, telework is not a substitute for sick leave. Is that, I think, what you're trying to say? Or if I missed it, well,
And I think that, I mean, I understand what you're saying, I just wanna make sure that somewhere it's clear that, someone who is taking sick leave actually documents that on the sick leave policy.
We do have that under the sick leave policy for sure.
And that might be enough, I mean, I just,
And in that scenario, their type of leave would be pertinent. And I do think that your idea of saying that if you're so sick, that you can't work right should be incorporated into this. Because I certainly, a couple of weeks ago, I was sick and I just couldn't work. I was like, there's even a point where I was like, I need to get something done, but I am just not in the game. And so I think that that's a good idea. And I would even on this, I would piggyback on this one more time and say that just because you have to quarantine, if there's no telework available, there's no telework available. So, you know what I mean? And because sometimes people, they want to have some telework, and I mean, you just shoot me some request for telework on the fly when I'm in the middle of a bunch of other things. I don't necessarily have opportunity to get something straightened out, and so I think that would be somehow good to include in this.
so this language, I'm comfortable with this language here. That would work, you guys. Haley, if you see anything that red flags you as we go through this, feel free to call.
When we do incorporate with the health area, I do really want to come up with some solid guidance for employees that if they are contagious, they just can't come to work. We gotta, I don't know exactly how to do that, but we do have to have somehow an encouragement for people not to, even if you're out of leave, doesn't make it okay to come to work. So, which is a little different than this telework discussion, because it ends up costing the rest of the office substantially. Now, somebody who doesn't know or is unaware, that's a different issue. But if you wake up and you have a clue, you got a fever,
Yeah,
you have an active fever that's related to an infectious disease, like maybe you guys.
Yeah, I get what you're at, it's just, in my world of work experience, I've never seen policies or language that gets that specific.
They do it for school kids. The school kid policies, like you can't have had a fever from a cot ailment for 24 hours.
So the question is, do you want to get that specific, in terms of defining if someone's, how to define if someone's sick and whether they can work?
And I've never really seen that defined like that way, after COVID. Everybody just says, well, I have people call in the morning and they're sick. And I'll tell them, well, if you're not feeling good at noon, let me know, but stay home. But then they're short on leave. And for that reason, they'll still come to work. And then everybody gets sick. It's been going around a whole bunch in our office.
That's what I'm talking about.
well, just to stir the pot a little bit. In the next 4 years, it's likely there won't be as many vaccines. Right? There's been dialogue about getting rid of certain vaccines. So it's like, all
If
right,
you believe what they're saying, the vaccines don't help anyway.
They
so
don't help.
It doesn't matter.
come to work with polio, would ya? Come on. Quit your whining.
Well, so on that detailed point though, if someone is gravely sick, they call in, I'm sick, I can't come here, but I don't have leave. We're going to force them to take leave without pay.
Yes.
That's the question. And I think the answer is, if we don't have any other choice, then yes. The only alternative is whether or not the employee and supervisor can agree that they can work from home. If that doesn't happen, then they are on leave without pay.
So this would go back to a Haley comment, this is where we have to color in bright lines, right, to really make sure. So there's no misunderstanding between management and staff. So,
I know on employees that are sick longer than 3 days, they need a doctor's excuse to come back to work with the tribe.
Uh-huh. That's always been the case.
Yeah.
If you're out on 3 days, you can come back.
Yeah,
if
the
you-
4th day, you need the doctor saying that it's okay.
You're cleared to come back.
And I think a supervisor can ask that too, if they're really, really sick. Well, could you get me something from the doctor saying you can come back to work?
So with the state, if you work for the state and you ask for something like that, you have to also be able to be prepared to pay for
Hmm,
it, which,
yeah, because the doctor said to stay home, but they don't have to leave.
Yeah. That.
Yeah, I understand that.
I digressed, you guys, from the telework, I apologize,
no, I think we took ourselves there. So, but, these are all really important considerations. Got to make sure all the language matches up.
But that's where we're at if that happens. Unless we come up with some different language, that's it.
Generally, if a person's that sick, they're not gonna come to work. You know, if you're thinking straight and
Yeah.
you know, I'm gonna get everybody sick. I don't have no leave, but I don't have a choice.
Which is another reason to encourage people to build up their lead.
Mhm. Yeah.
It's part of the plan.
We're currently letting some of our short timers that don't have a lot of leave. We don't let them make up time, but we will let them work ahead of time. You know, like if they know they're gonna need some extra leave because they're short that next pay period, we'll let them work extra time, like on a Friday or Saturday or whatever, to get extra time in to cover that. When they're healthy, you know, and they just got something they wanna do. That's square on the point though.
Well, it's another approach though, isn't it?
Mhm.
So how do you feel about that, Ethan? Like, rather than getting stuck in the middle of the day, somebody calls in, they want telework and you're in 5 meetings and you can't make that happen. Is what George is proposing an option where they can anticipate a need and then work ahead, like on a Friday or something? Or is that,
depends on the employee.
okay,
Yeah.
that's fair. So,
And, I think we need to revisit comp time and how that works, but comp time is really supposed to be designed to, you can earn it, and then you use it like leave. And so if you had a scenario where somebody was light in PTO, then, you know, it'd be easy to allow them to come in to extra hours. Or establish something extra so they could build that little sponge.
okay,
But I think that there's a bigger discussion to be had there. And as things develop with registrations and some other items, we may be more readily, remote work might be more readily handy in the future. At present, it's not readily handy. You know, unless it's really been developed more significantly in preparation. And that excludes, you know, folks who are in specialized areas like wireless, where the vast majority of that work is conducted over computer meetings and is remote in nature. So there are some functions, but you can't just jump into wireless, you know, like.
Yeah.
Okay, we were looking at the last bullet under telework, that's it there, it looks like we made some language changes there, Rogers.
Yeah, I think that's fine.
You good with that?
Yeah.
All right, you guys good?
mhm.
Mhm.
Okay, then we're gonna alternative work type and equipment use.
So, Mr. Chairman, board members, this is really supposed to set up some employee responsibilities for maintaining a safe and suitable distraction-free work environment. Or a alternative work site. It sort of sets the stage on what equipment will or will not be supplied And that would be at the discussion and discretion of the supervisor. There's discussion about who's responsible for what types of equipment and that, the OE and the FRWMB would only be responsible to insure FRWMB and OE equipment. And, sets forth, some employee responsibility for promptly notifying the employee supervisor of an equipment malfunction. And failure of either OE owned or employee owned equipment. That's needed to complete work, assigned work for connectivity issues. And that's, if you can't maintain the reasonable infrastructure, if the reasonable infrastructure does not work out, it doesn't allow just this perpetuation of remote telework, where you can't actually accomplish the mission. And, there's also discussion that unless approved for use in in-person business meetings may not be held at the designated alternative work site. So, I hope that helps to explain that section, Mr. Chairman. Board members.
So as a practical matter, how do you see that actually being implemented?
Mr. Chairman, board members, I see that being implemented through the section is 2 down in a remote work and telework agreements, and for a second, I'll skip over this private sensitive information component, but in those telework agreements, we need to have designation of the primary work site and assessment of suitability of the work site, designation, duration, the conditions, designation of communication expectations, core work schedules, work and performance reporting. So I think that, that documentation of every property being used at the work site, including procurement responsibilities, I think all that happens in the remote work and telework agreement phase, and it look a lot like all the rest of our personnel actions where we are, make the list of all the expectations and equipment and everybody signs off on it.
Can I ask another dumb question?
I haven't seen any of your other ones be done yet.
Yeah,
so
well,
we're gonna have to work at it.
it's like a gift, so, I keep thinking of a remote work employee being a contract employee, not a full-time employee. That's in my brain, how this is separated. Do you foresee, or does the board foresee ever hiring someone as a full-time employee that just is a remote worker? Or would that always be a contract employee? Because that's how it's divided. And if you have a contract, you're going to specify in that contract language, everything about insurance and equipment. But in the telework agreement, I could see this. But is there a situation where we would hire a full-time employee that would be remote?
I was in that situation when my second wife had cancer.
Mm,
And towards the end, I was allowed to work remotely at home with the laptop,
okay,
do my work during that time.
okay.
And that was probably about a month and a half, 2 months.
Okay.
Which was real helpful to me at that time.
Sure, oh, I'm sure it
And I
was.
got a lot done.
Okay.
That's helpful, that's good information.
Yeah.
What I think you're asking though is, do we plan to create positions that are in that category?
Yeah,
And it wasn't, I mean, to me, no. But, maybe we don't now, but maybe sometime in the future it comes up and that's something that's gonna work.
And as situations occur.
Well, and I'm familiar with other programs, you're familiar with EKI,
Mhm.
they have no offices.
I did not know that.
I
They
didn't
never
either.
hear offices,
Wow.
and
Huh.
they have employees all over the country.
There's an example then. Okay,
Now, whether or not they're employees or a contract, that's an example of a function, that's a highly functioning program, but they have no offices. Where
wow,
they had an office up on the top of the hill years ago, they no longer house that as an office.
I'll
okay,
give you an example.
My nephew is a full-time employee slash contract with, yeah, he lives in Phoenix. And during the summer, they travel to Europe. His families from Europe, so they spend 2 months in Europe.
Oh. Okay.
So, yes, it's possible, it's a possible scenario. But your question is, do we plan to do that? I wasn't thinking that, but certainly I think we need to be open-minded to the prospect in the future, but at least today, I'm not there.
Okay.
If you guys want to consider that, I'm, open to it, but that's wasn't where I was at, not yet.
okay. Yeah, in my mind, remote work meant a contract. And that's why I asked the question.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
so,
Ethan,
but you had an example.
Yeah,
Yeah, sorry to interrupt you there for a second, Mr. Chairman, but, a couple things. This really should only apply to employees. And some of our employees have a contractual agreement. If it was an actual full-on contract, that's really separate from our personnel policies. So,
Okay,
I just want to try and really make
That's
a
helpful.
distinction there, like if it's an actual contract with another organization, like, Redtail, right? So, totally different, they don't need to adhere to this. If we pick up somebody like the 4 employee contracts that we have right now, they do need to adhere to this. Is there a chance we could ever have somebody in there that was full-time? I'll give you an example. We max out our office space here. I find somebody who is not in this area, maybe they're even in Helena, but they're really excellent at processing registrations.
okay,
They're like, I really just want to work on registrations all day long. I might like to have that option.
okay,
I'd rather have the option and not need it than need the option and not have it.
well,
And of course, you get approval on any of these, in a one-off, one by one as they move through.
veering off just a little, it might get into our, if you haven't already done it, how we define our categories of employees, because what we have had in the past are regular employees, contract employees, and contractors.
okay.
Those were the categories that I'm familiar with, and I don't know if we want to do something like that, or if we've already done something like that, but those kind of scenarios of what I'm familiar with.
Okay.
So contract employee, somebody who was employee category, but had a contract. Contractors are separate and had a separate set of policies and how contracts would.
Okay, that's helpful, thank you.
Contract employees. Then as you contract with an employee, you have a contract that specifies their work. And we also have the option of applying all of our personal policies to them or not.
Mm,
Personnel policy applied, we check a box, personnel policy applied. If not, then if it didn't apply, then you included more things in the contract that specified that they couldn't do.
okay.
They're complicated, that's what I'm familiar with. I don't remember where we're at with that.
We, you as a board first in May and then again in July, set forth that there's 5 categories of OE employees. Full-time, part-time, term, contract employees, which is what you're getting at, and then volunteer employees. Contractors are separate from that list because they're not employee types.
Yeah.
I hope that helps.
Yeah, I think the question is, you know, how these apply to those different categories. Telework and remote work.
Mr. Chair.
Yes,
So I guess from a policy perspective, you wouldn't necessarily want to really define remote or telework based on the employee types. Mainly because like a remote employee could be a full-time employee, it could be a contract employee. So it's not necessary, I don't think with a policy, you want to really get that detailed. That's kind of separate from what the employee types are, and could be categorized in any of those employee types. Ethan was correct, there is already a policy existing. I had some edits to that policy, and that's before one of the other policies that I believe is gonna be looked at today. So we can look at that right before that policy.
thank you. Thank you. So we're still alternative website equipment use. More thoughts, questions?
I'm okay with all
I'm good.
All right. So that's this with private sensitive information.
Mr. Chairman, board members, this is really one of the like, put a line in the sand that you can't just be taking private sensitive information home, and that you gotta work directly with the employee supervisor. And frankly, whoever is supervising should be well versed enough to know what items we should not allow to go out of this office, which would include private personnel documents, that would include financial, personal financial information. And that would include what I'm gonna call wet signatures, which is, original application information. Facsimile is fine, or scanned, but those other items, when they come into this office, need to really remain with this office unless there is an express discussion about them being removed and available outside of this office.
Let's see. Any questions? We'll come back with remote work and forward agreements.
Mr. Chairman, board members, I did sort of go over this list a second ago. Hopefully this bullet arrangement covers what you're feeling like you would maybe want to have in here. I added and removed a section on, a bullet that is like what would constitute the cancellation of an agreement, and I'd rather not have to write what constitutes cancellation, but instead put that in the realm that these can generally be canceled, based on conduct and performance. I don't know. I had a hard time deciding if it,
Well, we could, similar, treat it similar to a contract that employee can request cancellation, immediate cancellation, or the employer can move to cancel based on certain conditions with a certain amount of notice.
Just keep it general. take Ken's name in vain since he's not here. He says avoid list. Don't, less is more, right? So
So you want James to add a bullet?
Our bullet here.
how did you put that, Clayton? Just.
I don't know, put back the recording, what did I say?
Just a generalized statement, right? That's what could go there. Failure to abide by the terms of the contract can result in cancellation. How did you put that?
Oh, my thought was similar to a contract. Where a lot of times in contracts, where the contractors or contract employee can terminate,
The agreement or the
terminate
contract?
the agreement
Okay.
immediately, or the employer can do it with like 10 days notice.
Just keep the language general.
Just say the employee or the employer may terminate.
With written notice. Yeah, I think it. You're gonna,
Okay. That, get at it. Mr. Chairman, board members, there's some additional employee responsibilities during remote work and telework. Oh, look at that. It actually has the employee shall not use remote work or telework in place of PTO when unable to perform work.
It is.
This hadn't been the first time that was thought of, it's just in a different section.
yeah,
Employees must follow applicable leave policies for leaves of absence during remote work and telework hours. Employees responsible for meeting performance expectations and standards and maintaining satisfactory work performance at equivalent or higher levels as compared to the employee's time spent at a central work site. Employees may not perform personal activities, including dependent care activities, doctor's appointments, or other personal errands. And employees must be contactable by coworkers, supervisors, the water engineer, and the board. Employees must notify OE and or the employee supervisor if the employee leaves the designated alternative work site during work hours, the same as when working at the office.
comments, questions? Consensus?
Yes.
Okay,
I'm fine with that.
have consensus.
Sweet. Whole section. We got it. Good.
Yeah.
Okay. Good job.
And just to double check, so we can use this to replace all other telework and remote work sections that previously were in the policies,
I
right?
think what we've been doing is assuming that once we have consensus, you can apply them, but Haley, you wanna reconfirm that for us? Do we need to take action or are we good with that?
No, you're good with consensus. What Ethan was mentioning was to replace that document, that separate document with the existing policies that were in the actual like full policy document. So if the board was okay with that, then yes, what I'll do is copy and paste that into the remote section.
Do that? Okay, we have head nods here, good. 2, vehicle policy.
Okay, James, that should have been a separate document from, I think, that 11/13 meeting.
Yep, just saving a copy of it right now.
Perfect. So I guess just to give a quick little recap of this. This is intended to be, like an appended policy to the entire policy document. Just because it covers a lot of different ground, that could come up with operating a vehicle. So, if you have any questions currently, feel free to ask me. This has been out for review for a couple months now. Oh, and I should mention, this is a blend of state and CSKT policies.
This is really similar to SKC's vehicle policy. Does it look a lot like the tribes too?
Mhm.
Like, no, I can't take your kids home. This is not a bus. Oh,
Yeah, questions. Starting with the very bottom, serious accident reporting procedures. Number 3, report to the nearest hospital or medical facility for a post-accident test. They're required to get themselves there, or we're just saying it in general that they need to get there.
Yeah, so unfortunately, in both policies, actually all the policies I've reviewed for this, they tend not to specify that. Mainly because if the employee can still function and operate, then there are means to get them there. Like they could call a ride, they could maybe call an Uber, some other form of getting there. They could call their employer could come pick them up. So that there's a whole bunch of methods in which that could occur. And so I think most policies tend not to be that specific with that requirement.
Are you saying remove that?
What was that? I'm sorry.
Should we remove number 3 then?
No, number 3 is a very important, piece of the policy.
I think it means we have to get comfortable with ambiguity.
They recently changed it with the tribe that, if it's less than 5,000, you wouldn't take them for a drug test unless you suspected that they were drunk or impaired in a way. But if it's more than that, then they definitely go in and the supervisor takes them in.
And that was the other piece that I understood,
Yeah.
if they get in an accident, someone has to take them.
They
in.
report it right away, and then the supervisor, as soon as they get in, takes them over for a drug test if it's deemable.
Yeah, so they changed the policy. then.
Yes,
It used to
because
be
of,
any accident.
because of the legalization of marijuana. They changed that to amount of damage, or if you suspected they were impaired, by being with them, or one of the other employees being there and saying, oh yeah, he was all messed up and run off the side of the road because he was impaired.
So you have to have an estimation of damage to make that.
Well, you kind of, you look at it, and anymore, just about anything that happens is gonna be
Did you
$2,000 to
say
$3,000 a year,
5,000 or-
puts a little dent in your fender. 5,000,
That's easy to get to that number, it seems
very
like.
easy, yeah.
But it's gonna get easier next year, once tariffs go in. Don't even look at my car.
Do you know where that comes from?
No,
It's, think if it's for your car insurance, it won't. If you, well,
Depends on your
if you don't
deductible.
report it to the highway patrol and it's more than 5,000, then
Mhm.
it's. You may not be covered.
Right.
That's where that comes from. Good to know, huh? Didn't have a clue.
And I just learned that recently. I did a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
The wife went in the canal
Oh,
during the
no.
winter time and went down on the ice. Didn't hurt the car. Was sitting on the ice and I didn't want to get it towed that night. But I called the highway patrol and let them know. And he actually thanked me for letting him know. He let me leave it on the, set overnight on the ice. And the next day I had the wreckers come out and I had enough ice. I was actually able to start it up and turn it around.
Wow.
They used 2 wreckers and kind of fished it out.
Yeah,
Really lucked out.
yeah.
Oh, and she's okay.
Yeah.
She was on it.
Oh, that was what scared me is when I got there, her window was down and she wasn't there. So I thought she went under the car or something.
Oh, my word.
Yeah, well, where is she? And then I got home and she was, a neighbor picked her up and took her home.
Yeah, that would scare you to death, wouldn't it?
Come up on the canal and the tire cut the edge and luckily she had it in all 4-wheel drive
Okay.
and it kept it from rolling. The bank was like that.
Oh, my
I couldn't
word.
believe she didn't roll.
Oh, my goodness. I'm glad she was okay.
Mhm.
Any other comments?
It looks straightforward to me.
I'm good. I've been through it several times.
Yeah.
Okay,
Is there any mention of like not to smoke or use
Yes,
vape?
I didn't see the thing.
seatbelts have to be worn, no
I'm not
smoking.
sure I have the whole thing.
Let's see here if I can find
Alcohol
that.
and
Cell
drugs.
phone
I didn't
use,
see anything about
Put it on the-
alcohol and drugs.
on page 1, page 2 is double, and then there's a funny page. Sure.
It
That's what I
just
got.
says alcohol and drug and it doesn't
Yeah, it doesn't.
specify.
Oh, right here in safety, operators will not smoke or consume alcohol in board-owned vehicles or while operating
Is
personal
vaping
vehicle for board
considered
business.
smoking? It is.
Mhm.
We have head nods, everybody in concurrence with this for now.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I got one quick question here.
Okay,
I learn stuff from you guys at every meeting. There's stuff that has to continually get defined, right? Like, is vaping smoking? Because if you ask my students, they say no.
Yeah, and we actually have people that vape in their office with their door closed.
Oh,
And I've kind of been wondering about that, but I haven't pushed it yet.
Mike, are you smoking? It's medicine.
yeah,
It's medicine.
The vaping,
Yeah.
goodness.
Tell me that was like, oh, okay.
Okay. Sorry about sneaking off here behind the curtain, Mr. Chairman. There was some worry on under the safety section. Where it says that the operator shall not leave the mode running in an unintended vehicle. Our vehicle is equipped with remote start, and when it's in remote start feature during winter
That's nice.
warm up, you can't, make off with it. It has an automatic shut off. Staff were concerned that
That would be a
that,
violation.
they don't want to get crosswise with the vehicle policy, given that, and in fact, just the other day, when we used the vehicle for a field visit, we did use the remote start option. James had remote started it. I went to go put stuff in the truck, meeting them separately and could not get into the truck. So, I think there's some built-in safety features, to that aspect, and so as long as, anyway, that was a concern.
maybe just in parentheses after that sentence, so with the exception of remote start situations.
I drafted some language here, if that's all right.
So what are they doing in Arizona with driverless vehicles? How do you rate those policies? Well, there's no driver. remote start, no driver.
Yeah,
Anyway,
yeah,
I digress.
yeah, no, that's.
Concur?
Yep.
Great, you won't worry about that too. Have to do with it, I guess.
Good.
All right. That's, please,
Fitness.
moving on to 6.3.
My goodness, look at us go. I'm so proud of us right now.
Is this also separate? Policy?
Yeah.
There's a physical fitness form for the program.
I'm not sure we have the one that's actually for the office. I'm
This
gonna
looks like a
print,
CSKP.
that's the CSKT though, so let's print it off.
Yeah.
Which was intended to get in your hands for reference, but, I'm gonna, print you off copies of the one that was actually for our office.
James, I think it's on your screen. It says employee physical fitness agreement on there.
This one right here?
Here we go.
Don't see that one.
All right, you want a physical copy?
I know.
I don't see one either.
Okay. It's not a big leap from the model.
This might change. Did I highlight that?
Yeah, probably agree. Thanks.
Been a while since we looked at this, hasn't it been? That was,
Maybe you could just
Wow.
actually delete pursue a policy set. Make people just go find it, okay? Just we have to try to maintain that cross reference.
we don't have to specify hours per week in the policy, right? Or do we?
The hours per week is, I think I copied it. Can you scroll back up again a little bit? Doesn't it say it right in there? Up
4
to,
hours.
so you can
Up to
participate.
4.
They participate for up to 4 hours per week in physical fitness activities, no more than 1/2 of the time utilized by the employee shall be paid time. And no less than 1/2 of the time shall be paid time off. So that's taken right out of the CSKT language. Does that mean? Means that you can exercise for 4 hours and 2 of it.
PTO,
Your own time.
yeah.
So with like your
own
lunchtime,
Right,
Uh,
choose,
don't take your breaks maybe, but you have to put it in the form that
Yeah.
that's what you're gonna do. Most employees with me either do it in the morning. They use a 1/2 hour of their own time, a 1/2 hour of the tribe's time, or in the after work. So they would take
4
off,
hours.
they work
total.
10-hour days, they would leave at
Yep.
5.
Yep.
1/2 hour would be regular employee time, 1/2 hour would be on their time. And some supervisors have a little stickler because say someone lives in Arlene and they're going home to Arlene to exercise, but they stop at the store to get groceries. And some of them don't like that. Myself, I know that they're going home and I know that they work out, so, I'm okay with it, because you can tell,
Yeah,
you guys got muscles like that.
coming in all ripped.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You got a couple
Add
of them.
this to the policy, gotta get ripped.
That's it. If you do this, gain 20 pounds, you can't get out of your chair, the jig is up, right?
Yeah.
So, okay.
It is real helpful though, it's a good benefit.
Yeah. But you'll have a body mass index down here.
There you go.
All right, thanks, maybe scroll down to what everything people gotta show now.
This part right here?
I know right there, just to. And I do have like a, you know, kind of a question like on how folks would code this. Would they code this as admin? Or is it actually just coded as regular time?
We, physical fitness leave,
You got a whole
PFL.
PFL.
Yeah, it's in our ADP already there. And when I do the employees' timesheets, they'll punch out at 5. Then I'll enter 5 to 5:30 PFL, physical fitness leave.
Yeah,
Is that what this board wants to do? PFL?
sure. Yeah.
Sure.
Kurt?
Yep.
My goodness. See, even James is surprised at the progress we're making.
FMLA.
Oh, I got that one.
Well. Kind of. Well, it's part of the federal, or based on federal policy, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, so board members, I was a bit confused why this was on the agenda because my impression was that it was already approved. Or-
yeah, we did. You're right, Haley, we approved that.
Yeah, it was reviewed. By the board already.
Make another check mark.
Uh,
I'm excited right now.
I think we can just remove that section.
I think the board approved, FLSA. But I don't think that there was a formalization of FMLA. And, this is off of my remembrance.
FLSA,
Fair Labor Standards Act.
oh,
No, scroll down, yeah, because I remember that, the board adopts the family, we wrote that in there, I remember that.
It does say reviewed by the board.
Okay,
Yeah,
there we go.
Easy.
all right, scratch.
done deal.
Revisit, overtime, compound, okay, we're reading.
Yeah, so this was brought to my attention. I think, Roger, you wanted to maybe revisit this. I had it as already reviewed by the board, but if board wants to revisit this, then feel free to do so.
Maybe I couldn't remember, I think. I think there had been some discussion on this, so. Maybe we can take a look at it.
Yeah, so the sections that are in here, I deleted the track changes from the last time, and these were the sections that I had rewritten, just to make it a little bit more simple. So that's why you don't see any track changes.
Yeah, okay.
Is the term work week mean something different than a weekend? For instance, on, the first sentence on the second paragraph, if, somebody does work on a Saturday, and does that get counted for the computation of overtime?
If they have their whole 40 hours,
Right. Okay, so the word work week doesn't limit it to Monday through Friday?
Yeah, we were actually go by pay period, so it makes it 80 hours.
That was maybe,
I think the FLSA augers in on 40-hour work weeks.
Yeah, I've
So
seen
you
it.
can't, bump it into the 80,
Oh.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But,
Haley and Ethan, so it has long been my position that exempt employees are not eligible for comp time or overtime. And here it just says overtime. Did we not discuss that? Did we miss that? Where are we at with that?
Whatever was written here was discussed previously by the board and agreed on by the board. If you would like to add comp time, that's up to the board.
I propose that we have. That's me, so we need to hear from board members.
Yeah, I with you, Clayton, I thought that's what we'd agreed to, that it would include both overtime and comp.
I'm okay with that.
With
That's the
adding that.
distinction, yeah.
Roger?
Yeah. So what you would, yeah, should we spell that out? It should really be compensation time
Comprehensive.
or whatever it's really formally called.
I think that's what it's short for.
Separate quote, like comp.
Sure.
Comp time is short for compensatory time off.
Go with that.
Um,
Go ahead and spell it out, then. Compensatory time off.
I just want to check with you to make sure I understand what you're after, right? So James works 45 hours this week. What happens with the 5 hours?
Well, the other piece of it is, I think, comp time or overtime. If an employee works comp time or overtime, they don't get to choose that they're going to do it. The employer needs to agree ahead of time. James, if you're assuming James is not exempt, but in James' position, I thought James is an exempt.
He's
employee.
exempt.
Yeah,
So.
so
well,
you
that-
work, you don't get comp time or overtime.
Yeah. And that's consistent with really the state's policy too, from all my discussions with them. I think the second piece of this that we needed to re-review is the definition of exempt and non-exempt employees, just to make sure we're consistent.
Yeah, that was specified in there, but I remember talking about that and we listed positions, didn't we?
Yeah, and I think we need to, I'd like to review that one more time, just to refresh my memory.
So that's the answer as I understand.
So, well, the state definitely allows exempt employees to earn comp time if approved to work over
Yeah,
40 hours.
right.
This would mean that, you know, there would be no approval. Like that statement means that they just can't, you know, like if we wanted James to work,
Oh, let's see.
you know, 45 hours and say, all right, well, we'll give you 5 hours of paid time off later. Or we wanted to say, well, this one time we'll pay you for 5 hours at your base rate. In addition to your regular 40 hours.
All right,
This
well,
would say like, no.
let's have Georgia back here,
Oh,
but I
okay.
wanna make sure we have that, let's clarify that conversation, because in my experience, where we were is that exempt employees cannot earn comp time or overtime. The exception was for what was called emergency, I'll just call it emergency situations. And I think sometimes law enforcement, but mostly it applied to, fire crews in the summer. So those exempt employees working under those emergency situations were then allowed to earn comp time and overtime. Short of that, they were not. But that's me, it's what I'm familiar with. I don't know what you guys want to do, but that's what Ethan is describing, what would be described here is that we would allow any not exempt employee to earn on time or overtime if approved.
Pre-approved by the supervisor.
Yeah. And I guess I can't picture in my mind at this point, a particular emergency situation that would raise to that level in our work here, but you know, maybe there is, maybe something will come up in the future. Other thoughts, questions? I mean, do you guys want to allow exempt employees to earn comp time or overtime if approved? Yeah,
I've worked with Ethan on, having to do some comp time, for when we've had extra work. And he's approved me to take, you can have this X number of hours of comp time for this set time frame. And that was through that email chain, this approval. And that worked out for us pretty well. We'd be able to, define what it was that we were gonna get done and what time frame.
well, non-exempt employees have to get that approval anyway. Right? Can earn comp time or overtime, but you don't, the employee doesn't get to choose and decide when that comp time or overtime is. It's got to be still be approved. So that really puts that in the same category.
Just to be clear, there was never any vision or intention in any of these policies that an employee would just get to go out and earn comp time or overtime without approval from their immediate supervisor.
Right, but
Okay,
but what's being suggested there for an exempt employee is that basically puts them into the same category. Really, there's no exemption.
Sure. Exemption from.
It's. That's the whole idea of having exempt employees. You don't earn comp time or overtime. Except in extraordinary circumstances, if you want to have language in there that says, except under emergency conditions. In our case, we could put that language in there. I don't know what that would be.
well, also just to, like, on the exempt versus unexempt policy, it's really a non-exempt employee is guaranteed to make time and a half of their base rate for any hours worked over 40 in a week.
So that's approved.
Right, but like, there's not a scenario where you can work a non-exempt employee over 40 hours and not give them time and a half. Which is, I'm gonna call it premium overtime, right? But you can't work a non-exempt employee, time over 40 and just pay them at their base rate.
Right.
Okay, and so that's really what the main focus of the exempt versus non-exempt option is. Now, for a lot of state and other agencies, they try not to let their exempt employees work and get paid for overtime unless there are extenuating circumstances. Fires, pressing workload, lack of staffing, those kinds of ideas. And then I've never seen, those types of employees get time and a half for their actual dollar amounts. In contrast, however, Like when you and I used to do a lot of work that would require long hours and everything, I routinely worked and earned comp time, which is just paid time off. When I was working for the state, and they do use comp time quite a bit at the state level. Doesn't mean you have to here, but it does sometimes help to manage pressing workload times a year. So if we have a lot of spring water right work or enforcement actions or something, we'd have the option to have an exempt employee work over 40 and just get to take vacation that long.
Yes, I'm kind of on the same page as Clayton. I've never heard of exempt employees getting comp time or overtime. It's, you're exempt,
Except in emergency situations.
except in an emergency.
That's no brainer. What's the difference between an exempt employee and a salaried?
Well, I mean, there gets to be, then,
That's a good question.
I mean, I would want to add, actually look to some legal policy explanation of that, but, salaried employee doesn't make it, technically, generally doesn't make a hourly wage that gets paid a certain amount regardless. And depending on the organization, some individuals I have observed believe that because they were exempt, they were salaried. And that's not necessarily the case, because in my experience, an exempt employee, while I didn't earn comp time or overtime, I was also required to follow a leave policy. Which made the difference. I mean, you couldn't just assume that you could, because we had employees who work. The theory is that a salaried employee, you show up for, what is it, an hour or 2 hours of the day, and you're considered to have worked the full day, so they would come in for an hour or two and then leave. That's
crazy.
never been.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have people doing that, but that's never been my understanding about the way that works. Haley, can you provide a better description of the difference between an exempt employee and a salaried employee? And if we can't provide it today, let's make sure we come up with that, because that's my general understanding, unless anybody else has something to comment on it.
I looked it up on Google.
So AI.
AI has an answer, but we should defer to our attorney, who's the pro at this.
So really the differences comes down to exemption means exemption from benefits under the FLSA. Right, so an exempt employee could be a salaried employee, they could be an hourly employee. But exempt itself means exempt from overtime provisions under the FLSA.
For any hour.
Yeah.
Overtime doesn't necessarily, like, the rate can be different. Yeah. So it's not, because sometimes we had a lot of conversation about that previously. Not all overtime is time.
And salaried, I think, is, never having actually been a salaried employee, I assume that it'd be similar to a contract employee. You get a certain amount of pay or rate, and that's flat, period, no matter how many hours you work.
Well, my experience with salary is you work a minimum of 40 hours. There's, most salaries employees.
Yeah,
50 hours, 60 hours.
yeah, it's minimum, but you don't get,
Yeah,
I mean, but you're getting paid for those 40 hours.
yeah,
If you work 50 or 60 or 80, you're not getting paid for the extra hours. You get
Right.
paid that flat rate. That's why I say it's like a contract.
Correct. The salaried employee has the same salary from a week to week basis.
No matter how many hours they work.
Correct.
An advantage of comp time for exempt employees, which let's. We'll do the math, like all our water resource specialists to hydrologists, they're all in that exempt category. An advantage there is when they first start out, we can assign them a ton of training materials and things like that, that they can get caught up on during a period where they don't have any leave surplus, so they can get a little leave, comp time leave in this case, under their belt, and then also that their advantages towards fast tracking some of their training. So assignments in addition to the regular reporting. It doesn't always work for everybody, but it's, in the past, it has been nice to have that option.
Sure. We were gonna look at the employees now.
Yeah, that's what I pulled up here.
If we should. So you wanted to see that later?
Yeah, that's kind of what I remember now, yeah. How we classified them on.
This should be water resource specialist too, right?
I was gonna ask if water resource specialist one was intended to be.
This should be 2 and 3, just based off of, what it says here.
Yeah, that was,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, right, good catch.
And for what it's worth, I mean, that tracks exactly what the state. When I was working for the state, sometimes things change, but, that's how the state. Handle exempt versus non-exempt in their categories of employment.
Okay, I have another dumb question. Is it possible that some of the rub here is that these are the definitions and this is how it runs when you're fully staffed up? But we're in a situation where we're not fully staffed. And you gotta get the work done. And then what do you do? It is part of the tension because we're in that pickle right now that Ethan might have this much work and this much staff, right? And a year from now, you might have this much work and this much staff. And maybe that's where we're struggling, or maybe that's just, use myself, maybe that's where I'm struggling with this, is because I hear what you're saying. You need to get the work done. Offering comp time is an incentive to get that done without costing the budget more. But then we have these definitions we gotta deal with and implement a policy consistently. But what do we do in this gap period when there's this much work and this much staff?
Also, for what it's worth, and to the best of my knowledge, I'm the only one who has earned any overtime. It was at a base rate. It was when we were really understaffed. And you guys were pretty excited to get some big projects done. I actually prefer not to work that many hours. So I'm gonna land just fine if I don't have to work as many hours as I was there. I do routinely work a bit over 40. And only charge for 40 almost every week. Just to clarify, I do not charge any time for when I drive to work. Just want to make sure everybody's well aware that I'm not able to pay myself to commute. So I will say when that was approved, and it was, each of those occurrences, there was a specific approval. You guys really needed somebody to do something. With that said, I mean, I'm gonna would be fine, I just need you to realize what you're doing on, if we limit folks, we gotta limit some expectations also. And, in many ways, it's a lot easier for me to have no overtime or comp. I mean, that sort of sense of,
Well, my only thought was if you added, and I'd like to get, you guys have managed staff, I never have, so you know more about this than I do. But in this period where we're not quite staffed up yet, could there be,
Does it make a sense? Does it make sense?
yeah, but could you have with the OE or board approval or whatever, some exception?
Now, let me ask Haley. The difference between exempt and non-exempt positions. There's some general language in the federal rules that say what should be exempt in positions. Are we, based on our list here, are we in line with that?
Yes, this is very typical of most public sector employment. And I kind of want to just do a general recap of this, because I think we're starting to get in the weeds here. So, okay, under the FLSA, an exempt employee is exempted from overtime pay. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean they can be exempted from comp time. It's generally that they're exempted from comp time, but there are some employers who decide to allow for comp time for exempt employees. For example, Ethan did mention the state. However, the state, in that example, they have a massive collective bargaining agreement, and so they're able to do that and offer comp time at a lower price for them. So there's like that little piece, but that doesn't mean that an employer can't offer comp time to an exempt employee. When it comes to overtime pay, though, that under the FLSA is the true definition of an exempt employee. They are exempted from overtime pay. What an employer can do, though, is offer them what's called like employment benefits, which can include bonuses. So for example, like if an employee is working a whole bunch of hours over, they're 40 hours a week, then an employer at the end of a quarter could give them a bonus for working overtime during that quarter. So there are other things an employer can offer. It's just not necessarily overtime.
The question though, that I was asking also is about the specific positions we
Yes,
have
that's the
designated
next
as exempt. How do we, those fall in line with the federal regs?
Yes. And Montana standards, that's actually more important too.
Generally speaking, the exempt positions are those positions that are management related positions, correct?
Correct.
So in our particular listing here, the water engineer, finance director, and maybe the lead hydrologist is management, but how do the others meet that standard?
That would have to be defined by the engineer, but typically management does not mean management over people. It could mean management over like a type of work.
and the technical specifics of a position come into play and the required education of a position come into play.
Right. Do you want there to be any more flexibility then on comp time versus overtime as described?
Yeah, the only time I could see that being helpful is kind of the time we're in right now, before we're fully staffed. And I just don't know how you put that in there without weakening your policy, if that makes sense.
There was a whole section on overtime, comp time and required authorization.
Okay, that's true.
Is that it here?
So
So
it's
this
in
has
there.
just been really reduced from the older version that I have, which was like 11, 12, I guess. In the older version, you really had to, there was a whole bunch of discussion about how that authorization had to work. And the only time that like a water engineer could authorize employees to earn overtime at a 1.0 of their base rate was without express board approval, was that you had to have vacancy savings that would be available so that it wasn't a budget impact.
I just see us heading into a time period where we're trying to staff up. We're losing James, wailing and gnashing of teeth, James. But, I mean, you're gonna be available, but not as much as you are now. So then how do we incentivize this?
Yeah, Susan. These employees not eligible for overtime. And we could put some fudge language in there on the comp time if you want. I'm not sure if it's good language there, but Haley, any ideas?
Yeah, how do we do this?
Sorry, what is the board trying to add here?
So if we were to say exempt employees are not eligible for overtime. And then it says, or compensatory time off, if we were to be a little more flexible on the comp time. Kind of language.
Like, are you saying that you would offer it if approved or, submitted to the board chair, vice chair for approval? Yes, what type of comp time are you looking for here?
I think it needs approval. I don't know who needs to approve it. I'll defer to you guys. But I think it gives Ethan another tool in his tool belt to get work done before we're fully staffed up. Especially with onboarding new employees who haven't built up PTO.
Well, okay, so I just want to make sure that we're clear here. So compensatory time off is different than like a bonus. So I just want to make sure that's why I asked what type of time is the board looking for here?
Just exploring how we might be more flexible with comp time.
I think you're gonna have to come up with like a certain amount of hours. It's not compensation in terms of money, it's time.
Right.
So that case by case compensation is not correct.
And I really would want it to be categorized as compensatory time instead of PTO.
Now, we're talking about the comp time.
Right, like. And it's a separate thing that's tracked.
If you work an hour, you get an hour. If approved, right?
Right,
Overtime.
it's essentially, yeah, you decide if you wanna do like a match, or if you wanna do, you know, like 1.5, whatever you wanna do. I mean, typically, I think I've seen like a match, like a 1-to-1 ratio in this type of circumstance. But it's up to you, it's up to the board.
Here's another thought, and it just, maybe it's way off base, but is to go ahead and allow for the engineer to approve comp time as needed for exempt employees. And that we set this up so that this particular policy is reviewed by the board every year, once a year.
Yeah. Because we could be in a very different place a year
Yeah.
from now, right?
I mean, that way, you know, year by year, you know, we just. That way we just keep it simple, set it, but set this so that we review that. Review that once a year. And in that time, we'd also have the records to know. What's been used, what's not been used.
I like that, Mr. Chairman.
Mhm.
Yeah, so you're gonna onboard. What is that?
You know, so I'm gonna throw another monkey wrench in. I get some announcements every once in a while and whatnot. But now, some of this, it's according to the Department of Labor, well, I'll just read this. They came out with a new rule. And it's based on your salary, not hours, too. So it says the Department of Labor last week released a final rule raising the salary threshold that would qualify for exemption from overtime, known as the white collar exemption under the Fair Labor Standards, which would result in greater number of employees being eligible for overtime. The rule takes effect July 1, 2024, which raises the minimum salary threshold to 43,888. So if you're under that, you are eligible for overtime. If you're over, you're not. But then on January 1st, threshold is raised to 58,656.
That's overtime, not.
Any eligible employee earning under these thresholds would be eligible to collect overtime pay for any work completed over 40 hours. The floor will be revised thereafter every 3 years, but then they go on, also they have a executive one that doesn't. It's at 107,000 and gets raised to 132,000. But that's highly compensated total annual compensation thresholds. So then those people are expected to perform at a different rate than the others, that in between status. So I don't know. I don't know if this is worth. Haley, if we need to get down into the weeds with this more.
So that rule in particular only applies to exempt employees who are on a salary basis.
On a salary, okay. So are all state employees salary or are they hourly?
They're hourly.
Are you asking me?
There are,
Yeah, I was at,
there are a few exceptions for appointed state, you know, style positions, but. you know,
I mean, yes and no. All like legal, are salary based. So they're offered a set salary that can increase.
So most administrators are salary then, I think is what I was told also.
Yeah, typically, like if you have an executive or an administrative, professional person, within a state agency, they're usually offered a salary.
I would just say. Reviewed every year, doesn't matter why.
Okay.
That sounds, I
I
mean,
like that.
there's a proposal, so this is a compromise here, so what do you guys think?
I like that. That gives us flexibility and future boards flexibility.
So this gives the water engineer approval power, but who would the water engineer then go to the board for approval?
Yeah, I mean, that's why we've been doing like the employee's immediate supervisor instead of, signaling out just the water engineer.
So what I can say.
So after you have an employee may request. Second sentence, second line.
Yeah.
In writing.
I'm just starting to be like a little critical of the drafting, but it says that the exempt employees are not eligible for comp time. However, an exempt employee may request in writing. But it doesn't say anything that their supervisor can approve comp time. This, I would read this and still think that there's not any way for an exempt employee to get comp time. I think you'd have to remove the comp time out of exempt employees are not eligible for. And then say comp time may be approved by an employee's immediate supervisor. I'm not so interested in having the employee request the comp time. Rather, I would prefer the supervisor offer it if the workload, is there.
And that's. Technically the way it should be, I mean, it's the employee's, not the employee's choice, I think the employer needs to decide that.
James, I sent you in the chat a suggested edit to that sentence. I would take out assumed.
Yeah,
That is too squishy for me.
yeah,
Can we just take out all of that then?
no, because it's, needs to be there.
No, so the edit I wrote you in the chat is for that sentence that starts however.
still think it's weird to say that you're not
Yeah, it's-
eligible for it and then say, but you can get it.
Yeah, that's the only thing about that I have.
I would say, just take that out.
I
If the board,
it needs to be left in there though, because on a general basis, they are not eligible for compensatory time off. The only way that they become eligible is if it's approved by their immediate supervisor.
Yeah, I agree with Haley on that, totally.
Okay.
So, I
Is
guess,
it okay if you just put are not typically eligible for overtime?
No, I just keep it the way it is too, because I think what we're doing is creating the exception to that by saying all.
yeah.
Okay.
exactly.
Good.
I think you still need to have something in writing for documentation. Say if an employee may request in writing and receive.
Or approved in the.
the approved should be by the supervisor, if approved by their immediate supervisor in writing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
in writing. Yeah,
Done.
Well,
Next.
and the employee needs to request it too, because then there's a trail.
But I thought we said we don't want the employee to request it. We want the supervisor to. request
Offer it,
Offer.
yeah, and, right, yeah, I don't wanna be,
Um,
and just leave it as is.
yeah,
Yeah.
Leave it as is.
Okay.
We're good.
Phew, that was the heavy lifting of the afternoon.
Wait for the next one.
Right, we need that break to be here. Going?
okay. Next one.
Is that this it?
Yep, I believe so. I'll make a statement on this. There's a lot in this. I have not really made a whole lot of edits because I think it needs to be significantly cut down. But this is the time to be doing that, is right now. So I would encourage a healthy discussion on this.
Can we go up one where just before, so we could, that last thing we were. Cause I think we need to. The
Holidays.
no, the overtime comp time, I think you need to update
Or you want to update the header?
yeah,
Let's say,
just change the date. To 12/24.
Oh, sorry, I just noticed something. Scroll up to 6.04. I think if we're gonna add that physical leave, we just need to put that here.
what's it called again, George?
Physical fitness leave.
Cool.
you scroll back up so I can see the whole list.
The 6.05.
Yeah, 6.04 is what I'm trying to look at.
Okay.
Okay. On this, do we need to have leave without pay in this list?
Oh,
And I don't know that. Like we need to have a qualifier like upon approval. Or,
I think you do. When I was working for the tribes, when I first started working for the tribes, I was in grad school and I had to take leave without pay to finish my thesis. And we have a lot of young employees who might need such a thing. So
Sure.
when I say young, it's anyone younger than me.
thing. And,
Good catch them.
we're gonna discuss administrative leave a little bit more, but.
Victims of
leave it
crime.
Here. Like, so, I mean, some of these, like, maybe they're not specific categories of, like, on a code sheet, such as victims of a crime.
I've never heard of that one.
Scroll down so we can see all of those now.
It's like required,
All,
It's
all
required.
of the
I've never heard of it.
day,
as far as I understand.
Wow.
leaves with day off, the day off leaves.
Oh, the holidays.
Yeah, holiday leaves, sorry.
It's tough for me not to recommend striking 12. It's very difficult to track.
So fun.
Uh-huh.
Um. Yeah. Well, we used to have a floating holiday, but I think our floating holidays were defined.
Generally for the powwows, this year, Christmas, they gave us 26th off also through council action,
But that's,
but they consider it one of the floating holidays.
but that, I guess, it's a good reminder, employee floating holiday, taking an employee's preference, I don't know what that is.
Yeah, I think that needs to go too. I mean, we have Juneteenth, National Independence Day. We've got, that's a lot. That's it's way more than in private industry.
I don't remember that, where did that come from?
You guys?
Which one?
Number 12.
Yeah, we have like 2 available and it's up to the council. to Decide when we take it or when we get it. The employee doesn't.
It was, we discussed, using some of the floating holidays. Or, like associated with powwows. And then, there was a lot of debate amongst you guys, and then, we landed on this.
What's the sentence underneath it?
I think we did just,
It just defines it?
offer.
So if it were instead of taking that employee's preference. If you made it at the supervisor's preference. Then like what you're talking about, George, if Christmas lands on a Thursday, you take that Friday or whatever, that'd be an example.
The day before Thanksgiving.
Yeah, something like that. I don't remember our discussion.
Oh, this year Thanksgiving, they did the grand stuff. We got off at 2 o'clock. The day before Thanksgiving.
Did just have. Pretty significant outreach stuff at 12 paid holidays.
Yeah, that was on what went on in the item.
Yeah.
But if you change that to the supervisor from the employee, then you'd have more control over when that happened and it'd be easier to track.
Okay,
But that would also mean that the office would have to be closed on that day. Because the supervisor would close the whole office, right?
Right.
The nice thing about an employee's floating holiday is basically
The
just.
office, oh, I see what you're saying.
Vacation day for an employee. If we get more office coverage.
Gotcha.
How about if you take it, like the hard thing is just like keeping track of it over the course of the year, right? Like who's taking this and, yeah,
Well, it's gotta be approved regardless, because they all could try to take it the same day.
it'll just be me here.
And I think our powwows, that's just a regular holiday for us. Harley and
That's a
Elmo,
floating because.
and then the
we
tribe
just-
has 2 floating holidays they can grant us.
That's what those are.
Yeah.
Those are federal holidays, they just move from one day to another.
Yeah.
2 federal holidays, they, instead of taking Columbus Day on Columbus Day, they move it to a floating, a different day,
Mhm.
it's usually around when the holiday.
Now that's Indigenous Day for us.
Day, yeah.
Well, let's maybe just put it as approved by the supervisor after breakfast.
All black.
So after the word preference.
Oh,
As approved by the supervisor.
Could that not just be in the sentence below?
I think it is in some form.
Oh, yeah, it is.
Oh, sorry.
Water,
Being
yeah.
scheduled and approved.
So there's 11 federal holidays.
It's true.
They don't have a employee floating holiday.
Done that yet?
Yeah, everybody. They're all tapped out for 2024. Actually, I didn't take mine.
So James, can you change that then to an approved by the immediate supervisor in advance?
Do the tribes get
Instead
12?
of saying approved by the water engineer, she's saying approved by.
Did the tribes get
supervisor.
12 paid holidays?
Oh, okay.
Sure.
I'm not sure either.
Right, is that what you said?
Yes, thank you.
Let's move on.
What about snow days? Do we do that here?
That's under admin.
Well,
Would be your call.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just wanna, we had never really covered that section.
Okay, sorry.
the prerequisite is snow, though, so I don't know.
Yeah, in the era of climate disruption. We won't have it anymore.
All right, so, Haley, you said there's a lot to go through here and should have some discussion. You said, however, that you thought you had some ideas on kind of shaving things off. You want to start with that? What are your initial thoughts?
I don't have any because the
Oh,
board needs to make decisions on this policy. And that's where we need to start, because there's a lot in here and too much probably.
okay, so it says 6.06, so where does it end?
Right, so, hold on, Dennis, before you go too far, right there where it's orange. This is how far you got last time.
Oh, okay.
So you got through 6. And then the next stuff here is,
What we gotta do.
yeah, that was,
I'm just trying to see the arms around it, so that's,
Yeah,
oh, that's that part, okay. Where do we start? Do we back up to where we? Did we review anything before that? We want to review anything before that?
Or does it mean we looked at it if it's in orange? Did we finish it if it's in orange?
no, that's where you were supposed to jump back in.
Okay. Thank you. I need that kind of help.
Like if you look up at the top heading, James. So 1 through 6
Oh, okay.
had been approved.
We're there.
Well, let's just go down to 7 then, just unless you guys want to. kick around anything else above?
No.
Was there anything in that 1 through 6 or that before there, Haley, that if you had any comments on at this point?
Yeah, that comment to the right, that's in the, James, it's in the bubble, yeah. I was just trying to create consistency, whenever we're doing like approvals of something, I suggested keeping it similar to, like, if you're gonna have a finance, so it would be the board chair, vice chair, and engineer.
Okay,
So it's basically making sure that we include all of those designated people.
okay. You wanna add that?
Yes.
Yes. All right, 7.
There's a lot of circumstances where 48 hours advance notice isn't necessary, but like that should be tied to. Really the like 3 days or more, unless you're. I don't know.
Can we work with this language for now?
Yeah, I can live with this, and
I like 7 and 8.
I do want everybody to notice that the PTO requests. For periods longer than 3 days. I'm at this point where I usually am putting. I like all of the PTO requests to just go in, to a digital calendar. And so you would invite your supervisor who then accepts the meeting. And that is a really great way for us to track, leave taken on the calendar.
How's that gonna affect us switching over to QuickBooks and using the QuickBooks timekeeping system?
It doesn't, this is just like for, the initial leave approval. The QuickBooks, you have to do a leave approval through QuickBooks also, but. QuickBooks isn't like, there's not any way to track. Like what's happened in QuickBooks, and most everybody here is not gonna really put their vacation time in until they enter their time sheets. Which is at the end of the pay period as opposed to in advance. So the other thing that's great about the digital calendar is that we can all see everybody's digital calendar. Whereas the QuickBooks approval is really limited to whatever supervisor has access to those employees. So I really promote keeping this.
Try to be careful what the balances are when they test them.
Yeah, for sure, and that's, those are all on those, personnel spreadsheets. And that's how we keep track of all that. If I was gonna change something where it says PTO requests for periods longer than 3 days. I would say PTO requests for 1 day or longer. Wait, where are you? At the sentence that starts with PTO requests for periods longer than, I'd say, so I just say PTO requests for 1 day or more.
Did you have a thought, Sydney?
No, I am taking over the games for a second.
It's 1 day.
Oh, okay.
It says PTO request for 1 day or more days, so you gotta get rid of that second days.
Oh gosh, where was it?
That's great.
Alright. Wait,
Number 8 really needs to be just a check mark, because you can't,
yeah,
yeah, okay.
questions? No? 9.
That 9 is something you guys really have. So from 9 all the way down through, let's scroll down a little bit more. Wait, 16 is all, PTO advance.
Okay, so 9.
So we should add that language, right? Supervisor to approve PTO advance. That hasn't been added yet. 14.
Thank you. So it says add language, so we need to add that language somewhere,
Maybe a new 9.
And up at the top,
or add to 9, or I don't know.
I would go up to 9, James, and just, under PTO advances, maybe right beside there, all PTO advances must be approved by supervisors.
I think it's immediate supervisor, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay.
But James doesn't like typing immediate.
You can tell, right? I don't think I've ever spelled.
And I want to check with the board here, that's where you want this authority for PTO advances. As opposed to. Board chair or vice chair action.
Makes that more straightforward. I like it this way.
Like it this way, how about, just adding, with notice to the board?
Oh, there you go.
That way, at least the board can be apprised of it.
Yeah, I just hate to hold somebody's leave up because they couldn't get a hold of.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Try to keep it administrative as much as possible.
right. Okay. Thirteen and 14 are sticky.
So let me ask a real basic question here. You guys want to keep this?
What did you say?
You want to keep it?
No. It's just creates too much confusion. That's my. Two bits. But if the board wants to keep it, I'll concur, but I don't like it.
I have to admit, I struggle with it.
Is this something that the state does? Where they're granting that 120 hours? Then let them repay it back, because I've never heard of that myself.
I don't know.
I don't-
I don't know how the state works. On the point,
I'm comfortable with taking it out. And leaving. The other language on either side brackets it 12 and 15. And gives the supervisor some flexibility, or we can maybe look at. Putting that in, but. Yeah.
what was that?
So on 12, it describes right there what a leave advance is. And on 15, it describes them being documented. And I think in there, and Haley, you can correct me if I'm wrong. If you take out 13 and 14, then you're giving the supervisor some ambiguity that they can fill in as they need to, without getting into the weeds with specifics. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, if the board wants to keep just the general idea of PTO advances within the policies, then that's fine. I would just recommend like a really general statement.
Yeah.
Something like that first sentence of all PTO advances must be approved by the immediate supervisor with notice to the board. And leave advances and repayments will be documented in an employee's personnel file
Boom.
if approved.
I like that, and I like taking 13 and 14 out. That gets sticky in a hurry.
Yeah, I mean, I would think, my suggestion would be to just put, yep, that sentence there that James has got, and then delete everything else.
Look, it's still
So I
small.
hate that.
Go to the little spinning circle of death. Some days I feel like my brain is just doing that right there, just spinning. That's all that's going on.
The certain,
So I can get rid of all of this.
Yeah.
Everyone's fine.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Get rid of 8 as well.
I like that. Simpler is better. There we go.
Does this need to be one?
That will be a continuation of the number above it, right? That should be the new 9.
You can get rid of that example there. That paragraph,
Oh, yeah.
and just, yeah,
nice.
Yeah, if you
I-
right click on one, James.
That example is kind of useful for new employees.
Oh, yes, I see that.
you can.
That's for a different situation.
That's for the above situation, like you're not supposed to use PTO that you earn
Mhm.
during the same pay period. So if it's possible, I recognize that you guys might all get it, but this document does help me with employees, who are just starting here too.
Dave, this circle is going to freak out a little bit.
Save as a different name.
Yeah, you gotta do that.
Had that happened to me this weekend, James. I was working on this ginormous grant and it started spinning.
Oh, God. So.
It's not a good feeling. No, I didn't lose it, but I had to do multiple backups on it, so.
Outside center is a growing plant.
Did they ever find out what the drone action was?
Most of them were. They were able to track them.
Just
a lot
local
more
folks.
people back.
Well, while you're contemplating that, I have a question. It is, about 4:30. And we're scheduled to go to 5. So we can, move forward our executive session if you want to have an executive session, or we can go a little longer. Wrap this up and then,
Let's see how much is left here.
yeah. Well, based on this discussion, though, we're still planning on keeping the events, new events.
That was up above, or that was clear. Yeah, right there. Make that a change.
You just kept it very general.
Yeah,
You get rid of it altogether?
This is a good place to break.
place to hit pause,
Yeah.
and then move on to.
We could approve. That's above. You could make this orange here. We don't know where to carry on. Carry on.
So, it sound good? All right. We have board consensus at that point,
It gets rid
draw
of.
the line. And on there, and then. Try to move on with the rest of the agenda. Do that, George?
Yes, I am.
Sure.
Okay. All right, thanks for keeping us up to speed. James?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, good
Good
job.
job.
So if we're following the agenda, we'll announce the next meeting in January, so we're gonna pick a meeting date in January. This would be that first full week, the week of the 6th. Or the week of the 5th, or. Oh. Week of the 12th.
If we can move that first meeting in January to the week of the 13th, but let me get the first week of
Class,
winter semester behind me, because it's usually a Zoom.
well, I'm actually starting then too.
Oh, well, you'll be in the zoo with me, so.
But I tried to set mine up so that, there's no conflict, but still, yeah, it'll be different. So that, looking at the week of the 12th, 13th.
You know your schedule?
I do, so, Tuesday afternoons and Wednesday afternoons are the best for me. I could do Thursdays, but I have a lab. And it's a bit of a squeeze to get here by 1. I could make it by 1:30.
Wednesdays.
Okay, Wednesday.
Wednesdays.
Fine with it, yeah.
Actually, that would fit in between mine, which is gonna be Tuesdays and Thursdays,
Okay.
or Mondays and Thursdays, whatever I forget.
You're gonna be teaching?
Oh, that's what I hear.
We're excited. We're excited to have this.
It's gonna be new for me.
Oh, you do
Yeah,
well.
I'm gonna
You'll do
try.
great. You will do great.
15th.
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 So
Okay,
next,
good with that?
I'm trying to double check my Outlook is broken for a second
We're
here.
gonna try and get in two in January.
Is Ken back by then?
Yeah.
And then the.
He's back by then?
29,
Figure that.
15th and 29th, so tentatively.
Yeah, I may have a little trouble at the last month or last week of the month for snow surveys, but I know as long as I know ahead of time, I can get it rescheduled with,
You know,
although I
so
like to go on them.
if we look at the 15th and tentatively 29th.
Where would you be heading?
Trinkus Lake, Upper Holland. It's our flight, and then we do we got 3 up north, Blacktail, Ashley Divide, Truman that we drive to.
Shane says he's busy in the 15th.
And then after, I think, beginning in February. Yeah, Bazoo Peak, Griffin Peak, which is up by Little Big Blue Lake,
Okay,
and Desert Mountain, 9 miles.
so,
The Hungry Horse.
Yeah.
Snowmobile nights for them.
did
I hope you
you,
have snow.
did you want to try to have the?
I don't think we are next week. We're a little worried.
I don't.
I just talked to the pilot.
Ethan and Haley, did you guys schedule
Yeah,
topic? So,
personnel stuff, some, state stuff.
okay,
Okay, so we do it here. Cool.
all right.
Well, Haley's remote anyway, so we have to.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Motion to adjourn a regular session, or executive session, motion by Roger, second by George, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And opposed, we're good.